Hey, good evening, everyone. I've got Tom Megtooth Sith on tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about OS6, a little bit about my library, and anybody have any questions, just throw them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them. But thanks for joining me, Tom. It's been a little while, but I figured if you could make it, I'd love to have you on. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about OS6 and the library. It's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of your videos, obviously. I've and some of the live, and I realized, I've been touching this stuff and doing this for so long. I kind of take certain things for granted. I'm like, you know what? I probably didn't explain that as well as I could have. So I figured, let me try to explain, especially the library. I had done the live show when I launched it as a beta, and I tried to cover a lot of stuff, but it probably was a little bit too much, and I probably missed stuff. So I wanted to show a couple things, talk a couple concepts, but then really just talk through it. And I know you've been playing a lot with it, so let me switch over, kind of give a rough idea. And if anybody joins us, we'll take questions. If not, I'll answer yours, and then we'll go. We'll see where it takes us. So okay, cool, that's working. I have to look away, so I'll keep an eye, try to peek at the chat as I do this. So I talked about it originally, and I know you know this from beta, Tom, is part of the goal with the library and with OS6 and edit mode and ProffieOS Workbench was to make it so that you could have the so installers like yourself and also just regular users can set the Sabers up, but then not have to always upload through Arduino to make changes. Because a lot of times, particularly from the library's point of view, I get a lot of questions, how do I change this in a style, or how do I make the ignition longer, or how do I, change this color of the blast? So that all that stuff is what I was working with Frederick on to make it so that, if you want new stuff, or if you're used to uploading new configs every time, you can do that. But for people who are new to Proffie, or people who maybe just want somebody to install the Saber and then be able to do it, how do we make that happen? So that's where the edit mode, the ProffieOS Workbench, and a lot of the concepts for OS6 come from, is that you can make the small edits on the Saber or through the other tools. And then obviously if you want to make the bigger ones or make big changes to your config, you can. Let me see. Hey, Harry Solo Fonts, thanks for joining. Chet's on. Kim Kanama's on. T. Kita, I hope I didn't mess that up. Thanks for joining, guys. If you guys have questions on the library OS6, or if you have questions for Tom, feel free to drop them in. But I covered this in that other video that is on the intro of the library, but the concepts are to try to make it so styles that are similar, or styles that you maybe want to use on different fonts, particularly like the rotoscope stuff. I've made it so you can either go and get a single version of the style, so if I just want one, I can get it. I can choose my enhancements and choose a Prion if I want it. If I don't want it, if I want to use this font, if I want to use this style though on a font that also doesn't have Prions, you can add the option to have it disabled. And then through the menu or OS Workbench, you'll be able to toggle on and off your Prion. You can also, a lot of times you might have one font that you want to have a regular ignition on. You might have another font that maybe needs the dual mode where it goes faster in one direction or another. Maybe you have a font that you want that spark tip on. So the concept of options in the library is so that if you know that baseline style of rotoscope you want to use on a bunch of fonts, but you want to do different things with it, that's where the combinations come in. And you'll see it does keep the count here of how many unique combinations. And then, power-up effects. Some people like them, some people don't. So you can have it so that you can turn it on and then disable it. And you can build all of these out. And it's going to give you essentially a single style for one preset. But by using either the workbench like you do, Tom, where you can, make a copy of a preset, or also you have copy preset in edit mode, or you can technically do it with your presets on an eye, you'll be able to take a single style, set up these different things that are typical that you want on or off, or your end user wants on or off, and get them all ready to go. And then in this case, just doing those couple changes now, I can take this one piece of style code is going to make 48 unique combinations of ignitions, preons, power-ups, cooldowns, retractions. And now you can turn that into all of these different individual presets, and then you would be able to change the color through OS Workbench, through edit mode. And then so you could have a red one that has your standard ignition, and then you can make a copy for Luke that has a spark tip ignition, or all these other things from one style. And by using those options and combining them, which is what I was wanted to show, you can actually fit more on your config, because I can make this single one, and I'm going to copy it, and I've got kind of an empty shell here, and then I'm going to paste it into this empty config. And this single style now, I would then just load it one time. But now, because of all of those combinations, I'm able to take that single preset and reuse it multiple times over through all the different fonts, change the font, change the track, change the colors, change the options, and then have it be unique presets. The same thing. So this is what led me to you, Tom, so this particular Saber has 2 blades. I do have a crystal on it. Is for crystals and for accents. Particularly, like I know you have the DV6 that I think you've got 5 or 6 blades on. So that's where I wanted to show you this, is the options to get the accents or the crystal and being able to set the behaviors. These are typical behaviors. So usually when you have your accents, usually they'll be doing 1 or 2 things, and they kind of repeat the same thing in different presets. Or maybe you want it to do one direction or one color or whatever in different presets. If you have particularly like 5 or 6 combinations of crystal chamber and accents, you can actually save even more memory by making a full list. So say, I know I want the slow turbine definitely on one of my presets. I want to have a heartbeat on another preset. I want to have, we've got the bar graph on another preset. And then maybe where's the turbine guy? Or we'll do a Cylon. And you can build this out. Where'd you go? Vortex, split bar. So these would be like the typical ones that you would run on your accent or your crystal. And then same thing for off behavior. And you can also set, obviously, if you just want to actually be off, you can set that as an option. But you can set them up. And what we're going to end up getting is, just by doing the on-off behavior, and right now I'm just grabbing random just so I don't waste so much time talking. But just by grabbing that, now all of a sudden I can take this single piece of accent crystal code, and it's going to give me 36 unique combos of on and off behavior, plus if you added other things. So I'll put that in. But I want my crystal, or in this case my accents, to pretty much choose from that list on all presets. Now, say because the options technically, you get 6 options on and off, and you had 12 that you wanted on your different presets, you could do it twice. But now what you're going to do is paste that exact same code for all your presets. And I only set up 3 because this is meant to be a blank. And what it's going to happen now is those accents now, you have 36 accent unique styles possible in this config out of 3 presets. And I'm not taking up any additional memory. And then I can go back and I can build out other main blade styles and fit even more. So I'll take my Fallen Order and, say on this one, I don't plan on ever using a Prion effect, but I want to add a different kind of, I want to add a cycle up and maybe add some other ignition options. Again, you can get more and more combinations. And I'm just grabbing quick, and then we'll do some other retraction options that are typical. So do a center, do a glitch, do a dual mode, and then build all that out. And now I can get that style code. And then I'll put that on my second preset. So I know this is my crystal. So I'll put that above just so I don't mess that up. And then lastly, I should have put the line right there. And then we'll do just another. So what the concept is, repeating the crystal code over and over again. Because again, unless you really want to go crazy with your accents and have them do completely crazy things beyond those 36 options, you're going to get more and more fit by just using the crystal code repeatedly in the presets and then getting all your different blade styles. And in this case, let's build out we'll do the whole Visions package as one. And for our purpose, so I've got now this one style is going to have 1,200 combos technically. Put that in. And granted, I'm doing this quick because I want to let Tom talk, and I feel like I'm stealing all the time. But just by putting those 3 presets, and I've got 1200 plus another 240, so 1400 plus another 48, so almost 1500 unique style capabilities in 3 presets. And let's go see what that's going to kick out in terms of memory use. And I think I pointed at the right one. So the takeaway was that if you use that option capability, particularly on-off behavior for your crystal, for your accents, and you just repeat that code through however many dozen, 2 dozen presets, you're going to see that you fit more versus if you put a unique activity on every single preset. And it's because of how the OS is able to optimize based on having all that stuff. And of course, normally my Arduino goes really fast. It's going to take its sweet time tonight because I want it to go fast. And obviously your config would be much longer. I think typically people do 12 or more presets, but come on, there we go. So I'm only right now at 76% with almost 1,500 combinations. And just on the single crystal, I've got 36 different ways I can configure those crystals to behave on presets. So that's kind of the concept behind it. Now, you can go the other way. You can set 1 per 1 per 1 per 1. But the library that is meant to handle it both ways, using that combination stuff, using the options to break out, and then editing in either OS Workbench or in the edit mode or in presets I is where you're going to fit more and more stuff. And even when you get into your crystal chambers and all your other accents, if you repeat that code, because those are typically smaller styles anyway, and then by compressing them into the option setup, it actually makes them take up even less space in the OS, and it gives you more space for your main blade, which is where a lot of these crazy animations come into play. But I think I've talked long enough. Let me get back with Tom, and I'll answer any questions. I know I missed the chat. But so that's what I wanted to primarily show you, and I hopefully made a little bit of sense out of that. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry, I was reading the chat. So yeah, this is the DV6 that I'm working on, and actually the owner of this Saber is actually in the chat tonight. But at any rate, this is the DV6 I'm working on. It's got a weird Graphics chassis in it. This is the old Corbant Supreme for Graphics, not really made for a DV6, but this is really a fairly complex build. It's also got stock connectors in it. So, the stock connectors are going there. So basically this is a 5-blade Saber, and the 5 blades are the main blade. The stock connectors are wired independent. And then the 3rd blade is this crystal chamber, which is pulsing. And this is one of Fernando's pulsing one off crystal chambers from his blade style library. And then the last 2 blades are, I basically have 2 NeoPixel strips as sub-blades here in the pommel, and they're actually doing an off-cycle behavior. Now, this is Fernando's initial slow one, but Fernando's upgraded the style in the library, and I need to go and re-put the new ones in there because I would kind of like a little bit of a slower cycle, because right now this is looking like a police light, if you would. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. It's counter-rotating. So the sub-blades, the way they're wired, one pixel is rotating this way and the other pixel is rotating this way. So I've got counter-rotating turbines in here, as it were, as sub-blades. But that's a 5-blade Saber written with all Fernando's styles. And I think right now I have 12 presets on this. And, I do have some of Fernando's unique blade styles on here. There's a fire blade on here as well as, I think, a water blade. And then everything else is just rotoscope. But I'm at 89% with about 12 presets, and each preset has the 5 blade styles. Now I'm going to try and condense this and get it down further, because now I understand what Fernando's saying. And I think I could probably get it down in the 75% land. And if that's the case, then I might be able to go and add Brian Connor's, his one blade style that I really love, the Boba Fett, the seismic charge blade. I am so excited. I want Brian Connor to finish that seismic charge blade on, OS6 edit mode blade style, because he worked a long time on that blade style, and I think it's probably one of the most fantastic things that's come out. But I know Brian will get there, and I know you and him talk a lot too. But I was, after talking with Fernando quite a bit and messing around with the library, I was able to get this Saber to where I wanted it to be for Robert, and it's getting close. And with the stuff that Fernando's talking about tonight, and Fernando and I have talked offline about it, and he's added some new features which I want to upload onto that. Just haven't had a chance because of day job. But we were able to get this thing down from, I think, 98% or 99% down to 89%, and I think I can get it down even further based on what Fernando's saying tonight. So it's cool. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, that was it, and part of it was, so there's a lot of documentation, and I realize it because I wrote it. But because I've been on it for so long, I figured anybody who had been in beta had read through everything, and there's just so much, I think, little pieces I missed. You had missed a define that actually makes a big difference. So that there's actually, let me bring it up so that I can show. One sec. I got to get better with this toggling.
Yeah, it was the ignore parser styles define.
Yeah, disable parser style. So I have a sample config here on the library. Right up this way. There you go. All right, so this is kind of this. Where'd you go? Why am I having a hard time seeing it? There it is. It's blending in. This one right here. So the basic parser styles, they're actually from, I want to say OS 1.3. Frederick might correct me. It might have been OS 2.6, but they were when the very first WebUSB came out, and they reside actually on all the previous OSs. The problem with the library and with the new syntax, they're an older syntax, and they're also they have only certain features in them, but they take up a lot of space. Particularly, the big thing is if you have like OS 3 or earlier styles, and then you throw OS 4 or 5 or 6 styles in, because of the syntax change from the regular nesting to the layering. They actually, if you put a style, even if it's the same looking style, if you put an old format style in your config with a new layer style, the two of those take up more memory together than if you replaced that old style with a new layers format that did the exact same thing, because of how it all gets compiled. So these being the older format and just residing there, they take up space in depending on your config. They can take 6 to 8% of your memory, and they're styles that don't get used unless unless you're using the really old styles, or if you did use Workbench and you don't do the edit mode styles, that's where you would use them. But the bulk of the purpose of edit mode was to actually do what those parser styles did, but take it to the next level. So the parser styles did let you edit your blast color and your clash color and your I think blast clash, spark tip, and base color were editable, but they only did those. They didn't do lightning block, they didn't do melt, they didn't do any responsive stuff, they didn't have all the new ignition capabilities, they didn't have pre-ons or post-off, so they were much more limited because they're from an earlier OS. So the disabling of them frees up 6 to 8%. You can drop in that if you use optimized styles within that 6 to 8%, you can fit 3, 4, 5 more new styles that actually fit more than those old ones did. So not disabling them and then running the layers actually took up even more memory, which is, I think, what was happening with you when you were getting to that 98%. Because when you wrote that, or I think it was on your live thing, you said, "Oh, I've only got five of Fernando's library styles, and I'm at 98%." I was like, I don't even know how that's possible. I was like, I tested like up to 3,000 combinations, and I fit like 25 presets. I was like, what's going on here? And then when I saw your config was missing that define, I realized, oh, that's exactly what it is. So this
Fernando, they're asking you to zoom in a little bit.
Oh, sure. I think I know how to do that now. Is that better? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the chat. I probably should. I'm bad.
I'm trying to keep up with it for you. Hey, I did leave that disable parser styles, and because we had also been working in beta testing, I had also left the the disable diagnostic commands define out.
Oh,
And
that's a good one too. That takes a couple percent.
yeah, I mean, so when we're in beta testing, I'm just so used to leaving that out. So when I'd copied my defines over, I did not have disable diagnostic commands because we were in beta testing. And if you disable diagnostic commands, you can't go on the serial monitor and find out a lot of what's going wrong on the Saber. So I just didn't have that defined because I was just copy and pasting from my beta Sabers.
No, and that's why it was. But it was eye-opening to me more because I was running on the assumption that that was in there, and I was trying to do the math as to how it was happening, and then that's what it was, because that define came into play pre-alpha. I was working with Frederick on that to figure out how to free up more space, because part of what, I mean, obviously Frederick's doing a ton of work optimizing the OS. Then the 3.6 plugin does even more. And then the goal with the edit mode styles was to compress the styles even further with the option capability. So that's the thing that was one of the big pieces that we figured out in development, and it was actually about a year ago, is that a lot of times people have the exact same style, and then they just want a different preon, but they still want the same base style, and they just wanted a different color, and then maybe they want a different ignition or retraction or something. And all of a sudden you have to add, so say I wanted that rotoscope style, but I wanted the rotoscope style in green, in red, and in blue, but I want to run it with a preon in one, and then I want to run it with a spark tip ignition in a different one, and then I want to run it with a different retraction. And so all of a sudden, just to get that same style, you would be adding, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 presets, and it's taking up space. By taking this option capability and taking that single style and adding those options to it, now all of a sudden, granted, you can go crazy, and I think you can get up over 3,000, which is, I don't think anybody's making that many presets, but it's possible because by taking each piece modularly, so you take the base style and add 6 options to that. Modularly, now you can combine that with your 6 options for ignition, your 6 options for retraction, your 6 options for power up, your 6 options for cool down, preon, etc. And then all of a sudden, that's how it grows exponentially to the point where one style repeats itself to so many different presets, and you can change the font and do everything you want. And because the colors are individually editable, so you can do the same exact blade in red and green and blue and purple and silver, and then change every blast and lockup and everything out of one preset. And that's where the idea of saving space comes into play even more, is combining the similar styles into one, and then using the capability of copying that preset out instead of taking up memory. So when you make a copy of a preset, all you're doing is you're just reusing that code in a different place. So the code is what takes up space on your board, but reusing it doesn't. So this way, instead of having 6 presets to get 6 options, you can have one preset that can get 36 or 48 or 72 or 1200 options, and then add another preset, and you can basically get to the point where you are fitting so much more in, and on top of it, what you are fitting in is so much more editable that you can do even more with it. And that's what we were, from the original concept of edit mode and what Frederick did in the Workbench, was working towards, and that's what now I'm trying to make the library support. Without the library, it was harder to explain. Now that the library at least is out, I think it's a little easier, but I wanted to cover that. But I feel like I've been yammering too long. Let me hit this chat up too, and let's see. You see anything in particular that I missed, Tom?
I've been checking it. I've been trying to keep up with the chat pretty good. I think we're doing okay.
Tom saved me.
Another big thing, Fernando, is there's been a lot of posts, and I know some of them are still going to Facebook, and I know everybody's trying to redirect them onto the Crucible. But a lot of people are saying, hey, my battery standby time isn't as good with ProffieOS6. And I just want to say that, number one, I have not experienced that, not with the idle time off and motion timeout. I have not experienced, this is my Graflex Mentor. It's got 6 different blades on it. This thing is a battery eater for sure. And this thing, I haven't charged it for over, since beta testing started. And it's still, I don't know, let's see.
Battery level 4.0 volts.
It's still full. So standby time is not affected by OS6. If you're having problems with standby time, you might be missing a define or something else is going on.
Yeah, Frederick actually posted, and I see the Crucible. Frederick doesn't go on Facebook, and understand why, but people who have issues or who have questions, when I see them, I try to send them into the Crucible. The battery stuff has come up a couple times. A lot of it's on Facebook being talked about, and I've brought it up to Frederick, and Frederick's like, I don't go on Facebook. If I don't know about it, how am I supposed to do anything? So if you do have if you legitimately have seen that your battery level has changed, go on the Crucible, particularly you can start a new thread or go on the OS6 thread and let Frederick know, because Frederick actually, originally it was reported a little while back, Frederick did a bunch of tests. The OS as it is with the edit mode styles that we did in beta it actually uses a little bit less power, as long as everything's set up correctly. However, it is possible that there are certain combinations of effects, particularly if you have a lot of accents and crystals, that maybe the board isn't turning off like it's supposed to. But those are going to be specific either to your config or to a style. Frederick basically said he just needs to find what it is. It's not that it's not saying that it's not possible. It's that it's not, if Frederick in particular can't recreate what somebody's reporting, it can't get fixed. So if you are finding that, or if you see somebody on any of the Facebook groups saying that hey, my battery level is doing nothing now. It used to last, 4 weeks and now it lasts 6 hours. Send them over to the Crucible, tell them to post, and Frederick will look at it. What he's looked at so far, he can't find anything. And just like you, Tom, my Sabers, I have them on all the time. I upload my one test Saber. I probably upload that thing like 300 times a day testing. And I change the battery, every 2 weeks, but that's also because I'm shooting videos with it and stuff like that. So it could be your config. It's possible there are style combinations that maybe somewhere in the OS they don't get accounted for, because the off, what actually turns the power to the blade off, is in the OS. It's possible that maybe something's not doing it right, but we need to find what's causing it to do anything about it. So asking a question on Facebook doesn't get an answer is basically what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think the big thing that we found that a lot of people were making, the mistake a lot of people were making, is they weren't using the latest Proffie plugin within Arduino. Yeah. And I even in my video, that was the first thing I covered, was you've got to update your plugin to the 3.6 plugin, which the one I showed on my video we were still in the beta, but I don't think the plugin 3.6 is in beta anymore. I think it's the actual.
No, it is the real
plugin.
Yeah.
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 So that helped out a lot.
Yeah, and I used to be able to answer in Facebook and all those other things a lot more. Obviously now, the time I do have, I'm actually working on a lot of stuff. I was hoping to show a little bit more tonight. I do have some really big stuff coming, but I'm still just working on it. So as I get it done, Tom knows a little bit about what I'm talking about. He got a sneak peek, but he's my guest. But there's more stuff coming. Let me see. I saw a question from Max early on, and I hope he's still on. I hate when I miss questions. So that's another thing, actually. Thanks for bringing it up, Max. The style editor is in beta, and Frederick needs beta testers. Now, you can take styles from the library, just paste the code into the editor and test them. If something doesn't work, just report it. Report everything on the Crucible, basically. I'm not showing the screen. Hey, sorry. I'm doing stuff on the computer without showing it. So there is a beta thread on the Crucible. Let me zoom as everybody asked. Now I learned how to zoom. And the link is here. Frederick is working on it. But it works pretty well. I've got a couple of reported bugs. Most of the bugs at this point are just certain effects that are new that just have to get updated. So if you try to use the editor and something doesn't work, just report it, and so Frederick knows that it's there and he can test it for you. But you can go, where did my library go? So I can, oops, I'm way zoomed in now. Let's just grab it. Oh, that's too simple a blade. We'll just grab this guy. I'm just going to take I'm so zoomed in I can't see. So you can just do get, and then you can highlight this, and you can paste it right in now. That was something Frederick did, is the copyright comment, which you still do need. You want to put that in your config. Because that has, particularly if you choose options, if you don't put that copyright header section into your config, you're going to have a really hard time using the new capabilities. Zoom in here. but you can paste that in exactly. So you'll see the code that comes from here. You want to put that into your config, but you can drop that in to the editor and it still handles it. It doesn't interfere with it. So that was something that he made sure works. So you don't have to go, you can take direct from the library, drop it straight in here. Now, if you drop a style in and it doesn't work, or if it kicks an error, just report it. But you can, just like before, you're able to, I'm zoomed in, but you can do your edits here. Now, one thing I will say, the colors, you're actually going to be better off using ProffieOS Workbench or using edit mode to edit your colors. That's the reason they're there. You can change your colors here. However, the part of the syntax change for OS6 is to make the colors work together properly, particularly for more complex styles like the Kylo Ren. Actually, most of my styles are getting complex, but if you start changing colors, and particularly if you change a color that's set up to be editable, like this base color arg, if you change it in one place and you miss it in other spots, you're going to get some really weird behavior when you change those colors in edit mode. So my recommendation is, if you're using edit mode styles, if you want to change colors on stuff, change them using the edit mode feature. That's what they're built to do. You can technically change them. You're just going to give yourself a little bit more work if you change them in editor, because they are very closely interrelated to everything else that's going on, particularly how the args are replicated. But this is what makes edit mode work, is these different arguments. So you'll see these are all caps. They'll be like base color arg, and you'll see that gets repeated a lot. You'll also see, ignition power up arg, all these arguments. Those are the points in the style that edit mode is meant to handle. If you see that, really, you don't need to touch it. You can, but you don't need to. The reason that's there is so that you can edit it through the other channels. It's where the stuff that's not written to be editable is where you'd want to go and edit it. Or, you don't necessarily even have to do that. But for those people who want to start editing styles, you absolutely can edit whatever you want. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Knowing how these styles are built and constructed, particularly how I assembled them to work with edit mode, if you're using edit mode capable styles and you're trying to edit them in the editor, you might change something that wasn't meant to be changed. And then if you try to use it in editor and Workbench, it may not work how it was intended. So that's kind of the thing. But definitely play around with it, test it. You can also start building your own styles, and report everything in that beta thread. So the link is in the beta thread. I'll put it in the description of the video, but key off the beta thread. Let me see that. But yeah, and Frederick's done a lot there. I know he's actually doing more to it. And he's building a capability for you to take your old styles and do what's called argify, which is adding those arguments for edit mode in. That's still in its early phase. It kind of works, but there's a few issues, so he's going to fix that. The big thing with that will be, if you have like an older style that you built or that was from previous that I haven't gotten to update yet, and you want to drop the color arguments in, it'll do it for you. The more complex, so your option arguments, your position arguments, your speed arguments, those ones, you have to actually do by hand, because they're planned. You go into the style, actually plan what should be editable and how much it should be editable. So those are a little bit harder for automation. But hopefully that helps. Let's see. I'm just catching up on.
I've been trying to keep up with it, Fernando.
Yeah, I do a terrible job at that, unfortunately. It looks like you've been handling all of them, actually. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, idle time off. Yes, that is the one. I put that on all my Sabers, even Sabers that don't have crystal or accents, along with the motion timeout. Now, the motion timeout, there's some confusion on it. My prop file has an automatic 15-minute motion timeout. If you don't put the define in, it does it on purpose. Leaving the motion active for when your Saber's in idle mode or whatever, you are wasting battery, because it's still looking for motion that's never going to happen. So by default, my prop, even if you forget that define, does it for you. But you can extend it or shorten it if you use the define. Idle off time, I don't do by default, because that's really depends. If you have kill switches or removable batteries, or whatever, you don't need it if you're going to use a kill switch. It's I still do it just because every once in a while I'm playing with the Saber all day and I'm tired, and I just throw the pommel back on and throw it up on the shelf forgetting that I didn't turn the kill switch off. And then, that's kind of a waste. So that's why I want to usually include it on all my configs.
There's nothing like waking up to 3 o'clock in the morning to Frederick going, low battery, low battery.
Yeah. Luckily, my office is far enough away from the bedroom it wouldn't wake me up. But yeah, that would be annoying.
Oh, yeah. I came home from work and I've been working night shift, and Jen's like, one of your Sabers was saying low battery.
Yeah, there was a story somebody told. It might have been you. It wasn't long ago. Somebody told me crazy stories about that. And for the longest time, I actually, I do kill switches just again whenever I design my Sabers. Even if there's no space, I put it in because I have one or two Sabers I use a lot, and now I've got too many and some of them are collecting dust, sadly. But I don't want that battery to get used up, so I do have kill switches on them. But if you forget, it's good to have. Let's see. I'm still trying to catch up here. I don't know what Chet was asking. If Chet's on, 2 different swing on defines. In my config, I assume you're referring to. So so these 2. Oops, I'm not showing the screen. I keep doing that. Sorry. So these 2, I think, Chet, are what you were talking about. The first one just turns on swing speed, or turns on the swing on ignition. The second one is the speed that will trigger it. So, and this has been since OS5, is how fast the swing is needed to ignite. So, if you don't define it, it defaults to 250, which is a moderate movement. Some people want to make it so that just normal movements wouldn't ignite their Saber, so you would increase that number. Your range is essentially 200 to 600. As if you say anything over 600, it doesn't matter. You can't possibly swing that fast. It won't be detected. But that just lets you adjust how fast the swing is needed to ignite it. This is what activates the gesture. Although, again, with edit mode, gestures are editable. So if you forget, you could forget all of the gesture defines in your config, and you could still enable all of them. That was another piece of it, was people who would get a Saber from an installer who didn't put the gestures on, and they would have to reload their config just to add a gesture, and that's why we made it so all the gesture controls are editable, both in Workbench and in edit mode. So you can turn them on and off at will, and you can adjust the speeds and everything like that at will. So you don't need the defines, but I have them in there just because they're actually carried over from OS5.
Hey, that reminds me, Fernando, there's something else to cover here, is when you're like in the ProffieOS workbench, in the Teensy Saber editor or whatever the program's called, Web USB. It's got so many names now. But when you're on that workbench on your Saber, when you copy a preset, it always puts that preset to the bottom of your list. And a lot of times when I'm copying a preset, I'm like, man, I really wish that preset would fall right after the one I'm copying, which when you copy a preset, when you're in edit mode,
it does
put it right below the one you copied. So like a lot of times if I'm wanting to copy a preset, I'll copy the preset in edit mode, and then I'll plug in on the workbench and then mess around with that in the workbench because it's where I want it. Because right now in the workbench, you can't move that preset up a list. Now you can't go and screw around with it. But I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, I have to do a write-up on that. Editing the presets I is actually pretty easy, but I haven't had a time to write it up. But once I do, I think Frederick can change that. Did you request that on his thread? I can't recall, but
that was one of my requests for 7.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that's the workbench he can edit when he gets a chance. I know right now he's doing a lot of stuff with obviously with the style editor, and he's working on a bunch of stuff. So as he gets time. But yeah, when I built edit mode, I actually made it so it automatically puts it as the next preset because that's how I wanted it to work. But OS Workbench Web USB actually predates edit mode. And actually, a lot of the edit mode stuff, I think we said it on one of the shows, is from the concepts that Frederick laid out with his Web USB.
It actually worked on OS5.
Yeah, it did. I actually had never used it. Didn't know much about it, and I started to ask questions about a related topic to plan out for OS6, And he turned me onto it. And as I was playing with it, I was like, man, if I could do this from the Saber, I was like, that'd be awesome. And that's essentially what created edit mode and sent me into a year of programming. But it was because of that. So I'm sure he could easily change it because it's actually using almost the same capability. It's just using it slightly different. So I'm sure he would be able to eventually change that. Let's see. So gesture. Let's see a question here.
I actually answered that in the chat.
Oh, you did? Okay, thanks. Yeah, I missed.
Yeah,
I'm
the single button color change in and told him where to find it.
Yeah, so color change is a topic actually, just in case you haven't read everything. With color editing, so any of the OS6 styles, both the library and the test styles, color editing and color change are actually two different things. My prop will not let you do color change on an edit mode style. You'll use the color list. And it's because of how the colors are handled. So I don't have to get too deep into it. Color change, the previous version uses what's called variation. That applies a single variation to your entire blade, actually to all blades. So if you do color change, now we have some modifications. You could do the rotate colors X, and you can do color changes of style, but essentially it's a single change that applies everywhere. Color editing is individual colors for every single blade and every single effect. So it's way more stuff than what color change handles. So for that reason, if you put if you have a style active that uses color editing, which means it's an OS6 style, and you go into color change mode, you're going to get the color list, and it's going to let you pick out of those colors and save them for your base color, which is essentially what color change does. Color change really changes your base color. You can't use variation, though, with color editing. It messes a whole bunch of stuff up because it's trying to apply a color change to the whole blade, whereas color editing is trying to apply one color to this piece and another color to this piece. And so if you have color change, the mode differs based on the style. If you go into color change mode on an older style, it does regular color wheel, or it'll do the click to change. It'll do that just fine. If you do have a OS6 enabled style with the edit mode and the color arguments, it actually uses color list on purpose. So I saw a couple people confused by that. It has to. We can't blend those two because they're two different ways of editing the colors. Let's see. I'm still catching up. There's a lot of comments. Let's see. Shimmer blade is very sensitive. It's supposed to be. I mean, that's the answer. The shimmer blade is meant to react to any movement at all. Now, you can adjust the so it's what I've been calling the hyper responsive. It has a layered capability. So it's looking at swing speed and swing acceleration together. And it's the combination of those two that create the effect. So it's the same as the old responsive where you just had swing speed. It's just now the function actually, it's going to be nested with a whole bunch of other stuff. But you're looking for swing speed, and then you're going to look for swing acceleration in the code. And you can increase those numbers. It'll decrease the sensitivity, but they do play with each other. So if you increase, particularly swing acceleration, if you increase swing acceleration value, that works. Acceleration is detected more rapidly than swing speed is, because swing speed is over the distance, whereas acceleration is where you went from not moving to moving. So it's a lot of trial and error. It took me a long time to get the blades to do what I want, which is part of the reason that the new stuff is taking longer to come, is finding the Goldilocks zone of combining these effects. So when you used to just deal with swing speed, you'd set it at 300, 400, 500, 600, and the effect would work perfect and it'd do what you want. When you take two pieces of data, or in some cases we're also using blade angle combined with swing speed, combined with acceleration, you have to see how they work together. So the shimmer blade combines two functions, and there is other functions that help those functions work together. But it's editable, particularly style editor. I think you can drop it in. You're going to look for swing speed, swing acceleration, and play with those numbers. But it's not a linear change. If you change one, test it, see how it works, change the other, test it, see how it works, and it's going to be back and forth because that's how I got it to work what I wanted. But the shimmer blade design, that specific style, is meant to be, as soon as it detects any movement at all, it's going to apply that shimmering effect. Now, the duration and the speed of that shimmer effect is based on how long the swing occurred and also how quickly you entered it and how quickly you stopped. So it's meant to, if it didn't react, it would just be a static blade. It's meant to react very quickly. So any movement, it's just the duration is dependent upon how much you're moving it. But the answer is that it's doing what it was meant to do. Let's see. I must have missed a question. The library, I have a link in the description. The library, I mean, yeah, the link in the description is probably the easiest way. I don't have it on the computer that lets me chat, so I can't paste it for you. Let's see. But yeah, it should be everywhere. And there's
I'll go look for it and find it and link it.
Yeah, the easiest thing is on the Crucible, there is a library beta thread. The first post has the link, and that's actually where you can ask questions too. I think I added it to the description of this video before I went live. And if not, I'll add it. Let's see. Let me see what this says. Tried to set to common folders. Still not reading. Put sounds from ProffieOS and common tracks. Kyler, that's probably something to post in the Crucible. Probably just start a new thread, and then we can take a look for you. Most likely, either you didn't set the config up to point at common, or the common folder isn't in your root directory. That's the two that I typically run into with that. So the common folder needs to be in the root, not so you don't put it in a font. Like it's just SD card, main X, and the main level of your SD card is common folder, lowercase, and then your sounds are in there. Tracks would be within the common folder if you want to share them. If you want tracks to be font specific, put the tracks folder in the font. But we need too much info. It's not the best for the chat. But if you post in the Crucible, myself or Frederick or anybody else will be able to kind of help sort through that. Let's see. Oh, I think I caught up. Holy cow. URL for the Crucible. I think we can probably post that in the description.
I posted it.
Oh, cool.
Also link your blade style page. They have that in chat too.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's the only problem with the way they set up the StreamYard is if you want a demo from a computer, it's a second computer. So makes it harder for me to get links moved over. Wow, it's already this time. So I feel like I was talking the whole time, Tom. I want to give you the mic for a little bit because I have you on as a guest and then I chew your ear off.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's so much that was added in OS6. I've been with the Teensy Saber OS, ProffieOS since Frederick, invented the Teensy Saber V3. And I've been through a lot of OS iterations and upgrades. And, I remember, I think it was OS4 where we got color changing, which was after you and Matt McGurry's fork. And I thought OS4 was huge. And then OS5 was even bigger. And OS5 actually premiered the Proffie board editor, and I didn't use it either. I mean, I heard a couple guys posting about it on the TRA, and I'm like, I ain't using that. And I know Matt McGurry was into it. Matt McGurry was messing with the presets.ini, and I'm like, nobody's going to want to do all that. But then on OS6, when I plugged into the Saber, and I'm like, hey, I know this program because it was the same program that has been there since Teensy Saber days. Frederick wrote that program back in the Teensy Saber days, and he just modified it so you could edit your presets. And I was like, oh, man, this is cool. And what was really cool, the first time I went onto it, I did it on a Saber that I had Bluetooth on. And so I logged into the Saber with my phone on Bluetooth and was adding presets and editing presets with my phone. And I was like, this is crazy. As if your edit mode wasn't crazy enough, being able to edit a Saber on your phone is even crazier. There's just so much in OS6. I don't remember an OS upgrade that's been this feature rich ever. And, you know, it's all a bit overwhelming to everybody. But there's a lot more information coming out about OS6, and I'm still learning. I mean, Fernando caught one of my defines that I missed, and that define that I missed, you know, it's not in my upgrading your OS6 video either. So you need to make sure you add that define if you're watching my video, which was the disable all parser styles. You've got to add that define. But, you know, we're all learning this together. And, you know, I think if we keep working together and being patient and helping where we can, you know, that'll help get things going better. But I mean, I'm loving OS6. It's still even a lot for me. I haven't even been able to test everything that's there. Fernando's library is huge. You know, that helped make this Saber happen. I was really running into a stumbling block on this Saber because, you know, Fernando's blade styles were so big and I was missing that define. And I'm like, you know, I've only got a couple presets on there. And I'm like, this isn't going to work, Fernando. And Fernando's like, what are you doing? And put up your config file. And then he's like, no, go to the library and do this and do this.
I was so confused. I was like, I don't even know how that's possible. Because we did throughout, one of the biggest things that both Frederick and I were really focused on was trying to save memory. And every little change, I mean, a lot of the memory saving Frederick did. Like I'm optimizing the style builds to make them take up less space, but none of that would work without what Frederick made possible. So the plugin was a huge one, but like all these other pieces, but we were like every piece that I put in, I was trying to, like, edit mode is typically about 6% of your memory for the menu. The disable parser styles is about 6 to 8%. But then the combination, particularly the optimization I'm putting in my styles, the goal was to make up that 6% the menu takes up. So what I was shooting for from the start was getting the menu added, but doing it in a way that you could still have just as many presets or more in the previous OS. And it was a balancing act. And again, Frederick being able to make all that possible, because the very early iteration of the menu, and Frederick helped me pare down the menu in terms of the code, because it was probably twice as long when I started, because I'm not a coder. I just made it work. And then he's like, why'd you do it that way? And I was like, because that's the only way I knew how. So we cleaned that up. But the whole time was to try to make sure more fit, or at least the same amount fit. So when you were saying, I only got 5 presets, I was like, I don't know how that's possible. I was like, I just spent a year making sure that didn't happen. So I was glad to figure out what was going on, because I was racking my brain. And I was like, what styles is he throwing on there that's taking up that much room?
Well, I mean, it is a crazy Saber. I mean, I'll admit. And, you know, if Robert's still on the stream, you know, what we wanted to do with this thing, it was a little bit crazy. It does have a lot of blades, and that's an unusual Saber. You know, most of my Sabers, simple battery, board, you know, and single blade, or maybe a dual blade if you have the stock connector independent. But most Sabers are simple. This Saber is unique. It's kind of like my Mentor Graflex. You know, it's got a lot of features. So it was a unique Saber. It's not going to be like everyone else's builds. And I was glad you walked me through it. I do understand it now. And so now I'm going to go back and even slim that down even more based on some of the stuff you showed tonight, because I didn't understand to copy and paste those codes. And that's something I asked in the Crucible, and I think Brian Connor answered me. I said, well, if we get the exact same style and we post in the presets, when it's compiling your code, can't it just be like, oh, this is the same code they used before?
It doesn't take up the preset will take up, I think it's like 16 or 24 bits, just because it has to save the font and the track name. But that's it. But the style code, the compiler just reuses it. It doesn't actually. Now, the thing will be, right? So say you do have that, like I built a 36 combo accent, and I repeated that in 12 different presets. What's going to happen is, if you go to edit mode now and I change the style number on my crystal chamber, it's not actually going to change anything. The option number is. That's where another piece I have to finish writing is. Style number is that style from the preset itself. The option number is where you combine all of those on and off behaviors in. Those are different. That's why that section of code at the top that has the copyright, it has the name, and it'll say options, and it has them all listed with numbers next to them. that was a big piece of the library that I needed, because if I gave you options and I didn't tell you what they were and you didn't have a way to look them up, you couldn't use them. So anybody who's using the library, that code at the top, it is a copyright because of all the work I put in to put that style together, but it's also the receipt, and it's also the use, essentially the manual for your config on how to get to those particular options you've chosen. And that all that coming together is what took the library a while to get active. But you'll get, so if you use the same exact accent or same exact crystal code to save space and use it in every preset, it's not going to take up any extra space. But what you want to remember is that code, that chunk of code at the top, or the comment at the top, is going to tell you how to change from the option one, which is maybe a pulse, to turbine, to heartbeat. Like, the only way you could do that is with the options. You won't be changing that with the style number. Whereas your main blade, you'll be changing the style numbers, because styles are usually bigger for main. So there's a learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, most of the blade styles that I programmed on the DV6, were the rotoscopes. I mean, I love the rotoscope blade style. It's awesome. It's crazy. There's rotoscope on blue. It's blowing out the camera, but that's definitely rotoscope. It's an awesome blade style. But the cool thing about rotoscope, which I understood but didn't really hear what you were saying before, where now I can go and add all those options in rotoscope that give you the thousands of combinations on that blade style, and then just copy and paste that as the first blade or the main blade, and that will save space. I did not understand that. So each of my rotoscopes is different, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have just built out the options in my first one.
Yeah, if you combine them, you'll actually save memory just by doing that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to do that. So I'm hoping if I do that, we can get that down from, I think, 89%, where that's at now, with 12 presets with 5 blades. And I think we might be able to knock that down to maybe, I'm guessing, 75%?
Yeah, so the ones right now, just for the general audience, the pieces of style code that take up the most room typically are going to be your preons. Preons have a lot of animation in them. And they usually are compound transitions. So those take up a lot of space. That's one of the reasons I made options on preon, was because people love the faulty ignition. People love all these different preon effects, and they want to reuse them. Those, particularly in OS5, are actually the biggest pieces. The main blade itself usually takes up a lot of space, but it's supposed to. That's what's running all the time. The next biggest memory use is the preon effect, because a lot of these preons are very specific animations that does this and then this and then that and then that and then that on purpose. It's kind of a cool feature, but that's what's eating up your memory. Your blasts and your lockups and your clashes are very, very tiny pieces of code. Ignition and retraction, or you can get crazy with it, but most people are using pretty standard stuff, going in one direction or another, or fader cycle. But it's the preons is where you'll actually see, if you have a ton of different preons in a ton of different presets, you're going to suck up memory a lot faster. But if you combine those into the option capabilities, it will shrink it. But the preon effects are still going to take up space, because they're doing the most, even though they're very short. Because usually a preon doesn't just do one thing. It builds up, it moves, it does all. So all that's additional animation. But that's where, some of it's going to be trial and error too. Like even myself, like there's been times where I'm like, well, let me just see, and I'll combine a couple things, throw them in, and then I'll separate them out, and I'll be like, all right, that saved me, 1,000 bytes or something, and that's not a lot. But if you think about that per preset, all of a sudden that becomes another preset you can fit. So it's going to be, for some people, depending on how crazy you get with the styles, some people might be better off keeping the single approach. But if you find yourself reusing the same base style with a few different options, combining them into a single and then using that capability will save you more room. Yeah, the workbench was around a long time. And Frederick, when edit mode got to the point of viability, Frederick immediately started updating the web USB to do all the same things. Now there's a couple spots where they do things differently, and that's more personal choice. Frederick likes to do things one way, I like them a different way. So I did it one way in my prop, and he did it his way in there. But they're essentially doing very similar things. In some cases, it's just a matter of preference. Let's see. Cool. I think we're caught up in the chat. Oh, we're coming up on the hour mark. But yeah, if anybody else has any other questions, otherwise I don't want to. I know Tom, you literally just walked in the door from work, so I do appreciate you coming on, but I don't want to keep you on all too long. But you didn't ask many questions. Do you have any questions?
No, I mean, you answered them right there at the get-go. And the funny thing is, I guess you missed my question in the Crucible on that, because Brian Connor answered it, and he's like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure Fernando said, I was reading the documentation, and I was pretty sure you had said that initially, but I couldn't remember. So I had all unique rotoscope blade styles, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have just built the one rotoscope I needed with all the options, and then pasted that as my main blade on all my main blades to kind of chill that out. And by the way, that'll be my main blade on the stock connector too, all except for one preset, because I have a special blade on that stock connector on one of the presets, so it does its own independent thing, which is from Dimitri, which that's pretty crazy. But now that I know what I know from what you said tonight, I think we can probably cut that config with 12 presets, each preset with 5 blades, probably down to a 70% range. Because when I was first building this DV6, I was like, man, you know, Frederick and Fernando, they were thinking about Proffie board 3.7. And, you know, my Proffie board 3.7, I could upload the world on that thing, and it's like you've only used 60%. But the Proffie board 2.2s, we were still, you know, kind of up there in the high 80s, 90s land, sometimes filling it up or overflowing your cache. And then you get the error uploading because you've overflowed the cache. But now that I know what I know from what you said tonight, and I hope everyone else understands it, is with all the options you built in a blade style, you just copy and paste that blade style for your main blade on each of your presets. But each of those options, you have like 2,000 things you can do with that blade, but it's only going to use that blade in the compilation one time. And it knows that
it's identical. So if you change, that's the thing. If you change something, so even if you change one piece, it won't take up as much, but it sees it as different. It's identical. That's why I was using the same crystal code 3 times. It's identical. If there are variations, the compiler is trying to make a match, but it's basically reading the style. And if it gets to even a point where the color is different, it's going to say, okay, that is different. So, and that's the other piece of it too. Like, you know, the old way was you do a red for Vader, you do a green version of whatever audio flicker for Luke, and a blue version for Obi-Wan, and you'd save them as separate presets. What you want to do, and again, this is all optional. Like if you're used to doing one style per preset and building the same, so taking a rotoscope in red, a rotoscope in green, a rotoscope in blue with just one thing each, drop it in your config, you can absolutely continue doing that. And you will still save space if you have the defines and if you're using the other stuff. So I don't want to make people build these huge options if they're never going to use them. They're there for the people who really want to mix and match. If you just always want a standard ignition, standard retraction, and you just want to have a rotoscope in red, green, blue, and maybe one of them have a Preon and the rest don't, you can build those individually. You still should save space. It's just if you found yourself making the exact same style just in different colors, or just the exact same style but with a different ignition or a different blast or something like that, this is where it can save space. The other thing is the color stuff. So if you know that you want rotoscope in red, green, and blue, and you want everything else to be roughly the same, maybe changing 1 or 2 things, save it as a single preset in one color. Copy that preset using the workbench or edit mode, and then change the color there. And then you use no additional memory. So color, you can change every single color that's editable, and all your options and your ignitions and all that, and use no additional space. So that's where the color thing to it comes in. So you don't need to change the color in the config. The changing the colors using the capabilities of edit mode and the workbench are really going to save you even more space. So but you can do either way. There isn't a right way. We've purposefully, the OS, thanks to Frederick and what we've done, and also the goal of the library, is to handle everybody and how they want to do it. I'm just trying to show some methods. If you're the type of person who wants to get 80 presets and you'd like your config to run at 98%, but have as much as possible, there's optimization techniques. If you're running 5, 6, 7, 8 presets and you only have 1 or 2 blades, you can do whatever you want. You should still fit it all. If you find you're not, put it on the Crucible so I can take a look. The defines are typically what's going to cause, but I've been trying to make sure that you fit more. As much as I have control, Frederick's done even more of it, but all the styles in the library are being designed and built in a way to make more fit. So if it's not, let us know so we can take a look at why and maybe we can address it.
So I have a non-OS6, non-Saber related thing that I want to mess with Fernando about tonight. And it's always up on my workbench behind me, and I want to see if he knows what this is.
Is that your original Kylo?
No.
No?
So, when the Black Series helmet first came out, everybody was doing the jaw swap off the Disney mask with the Black Series mask. So, and by the way, my helmet is a BS with the Disney jaw swap. It actually looks almost as good as the Anovos because I've had it right next to an Anovos and everybody's like, holy crap, that's not an Anovos. And I'm like, that's a BS. That's a Hasbro one. But this was an insider joke on the Sith Lord detachment. So I said, well, I'm going to do a Black Series Disney swap. And that's what that is.
Okay. Man,
with the Black
I
Series.
haven't been on an SLD in forever, man. And I was a moderator there for a while. I
joke on the SLD in the Kylo group.
Literally the second, and I know Anovos gets a bad rap, and I think they deserve it in some ways. But the second that Anovos announced the Kylo mask, if I wasn't within the first 10 people to place that order, I don't know who else beat me to it. And that's what made me do the Kylo build. So I never went down that path because as soon as I saw that helmet, I was like, man, I don't care what it costs. That's mine.
Y'all saw my PJs. So this is my helmet, which, this was a Black Series, but there's a lot of work that went into that one to make it better. It's actually turned a Black Series and basically turned it into almost an Anovos quality helmet, with a lot of the weathering and everything. But I just want to show that off. I've got fans and batteries and all that stuff in here too. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a big head, man. I can't put fans in my Kylo. My Vader, I've got 3 fans. My Kylo, I just gotta sweat it out.
Oh man, Kylo is so hot. It's brutal.
Yeah. I take away the 3rd level if it's summertime. I don't wear the undersuit.
Yeah, it's brutal. Mine's brutal because I sewed mine all myself, and the pleated tunic is miserable hot.
It's so thick. It's crazy.
Well, mine's like wearing knife armor because I made it myself. It's crazy. I think mine weighs like 12 pounds.
Oh yeah. No, Well, I mean, and how is your Vader coming? Because I know you were going down that path.
Well, I've got boots. I've got the chest box. I've got the belt box and the COD ordered. So leather suit, gloves, and the
cape?
armor and the cape.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm doing EST Vader.
Okay, yeah, I did. I'm Return of the Jedi. I've gone through so many capes, but I finally got a Kev Vader, and now this is probably 8-9 years ago. But the difference,
his wait list is like 3 years long.
Yeah, well, and I waited a long time for it, but that cape combined with I have the fiberglass armor from Darth Stone, man. It's probably like 20 pounds of weight on my shoulders when I wear that thing.
Yeah, I'm excited to get Vader up and running. I gained some weight the last couple of years of work with COVID and everything else has been so stressful. They're killing us at work. And I gained a lot of weight. I can't even fit in my Kylo right now. So, I'm on a New Year's resolution to lose the weight again. So, but yeah, I mean, I got to lose the weight and get back into shape to get into my Kylo. But that's another reason I was building the Vader because, I can kind of get rid of some of the areas where I can't on Kylo. Kylo is very form fitting.
Yes, he is. I have 3 different belts because my weight fluctuates. So I have my total fighting weight belt. I have my bulk weight belt because I do training and I put on weight, and then I have my I've been eating too many cookies and drinking too many beers belt. So
That's awesome. So I was glad, we got to talk about something else besides lightsabers, because I know you and
yeah,
I, share that in common, and might get other people to realize that, you and I are Star Wars nerds beyond the ProffieOS stuff and beyond the lightsabers. We really love Star Wars, and it's kind of cool to let everybody know that too.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could do a whole 501st show. It's that'd be cool, actually. I've been, unfortunately, at least out by us by Raleigh, we've been having a hard time with events, so I haven't actually been able to troop. The one good event that came up, of course, was a weekend I had to work. So it's so I haven't been to a good event in a good chunk of time, but I'm definitely want to. I haven't trooped with my what you call it, the Skywalker version of Kylo yet, because right when I got it all done and I got approved for the CRL is when COVID hit. So
yeah, COVID's been tough.
But yeah, I look forward to it. Well, I do appreciate you coming on. I'm glad I hopefully explained some stuff. But again, all of it is just a way to do it. There's no right or wrong. So how you were building your stuff is perfect. If it works, it's perfectly fine. It's just if you were finding memory, if you were running out of space, these were just some suggestions. There's, people, particularly yourself or anybody who's been doing Proffie for a long time, I didn't want to change how you guys did it. I just wanted to give other options. And then also for people who are new to it, they can choose. They can go either way. So it should be, Frederick particularly and really wanted to make sure everything was as flexible as possible. And that's how I've tried to keep it, even from the library design, is you can go any which way you want. It's just what you're trying to do. If you are trying to cram as much as you possibly can into the config, go after some of the combo stuff, because that's how you're going to fit a little bit more. If you're not so worried about it, or if you are, like I have some sabers that I probably have 3 presets on, and that's it, because that's all I ever wanted on them. In which case, go to town and do what you want. But if you're the type of person that does want, I want to put 200 presets on it just so I can tell somebody I have 200 fonts on my Saber, there's ways to make it fit. Well, I guess nothing new in the chat. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks again, really, Tom, for giving me some time tonight. And if anything else comes up, by all means, shoot over the question. I do have more stuff coming. I am very, very far from done on OS6. Even though I've been quiet for a while, I actually have something brewing. The reason I'm quiet is because it's taking me a while to get it working. But there's a lot more coming. So OS6 just released. I expect to be developing for OS6 for probably into the summer and beyond with everything I have planned. So don't think, people go to the library and they're like, oh, it's this style from your OS5 library isn't there yet. I'm like, I know. I'm working on it. I'll get to it. So everything is coming, and a lot more than is expected is on the way. I need time, and I need to make it work right before it comes out.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. I'm very happy. I'm excited to go and fix the config on this DV6 and see what else I can jam on there for Robert.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and thanks everybody, and we'll have to do this again, and maybe we'll dedicate more time to the costume stuff as you get your Vader done. That'd be awesome to get your Vader up and shoot, because I used to mentor new Vaders on the SLD for a while. That was one of my big things as a mod, was trying to help the new guys get along. I've moved past that for a number of years, but I still appreciate Vader is probably Vader and Boba Fett at the time were probably the 2 hardest costumes and the 2 most costly but also time-consuming costumes. And trying to get people to understand it, because you get people come, oh, I want to find my first Vader. I got an event in 3 months, and how do I get it? And I'm like, yeah, you needed to start 4 years ago, but here's what you can start now.
It took 2 years just to get my chest box, and the boots weren't exactly the brand I wanted, but they're going to work. I mean, I got to cut one of the strap. The boots I order are kind of like the Chippewas, and they have that strap on them. But, I mean, they're Vader boots. I mean, they're approvable, and they're good boots. They're just not the ones I wanted. But, yeah, I mean, Vader takes a long time. I mean, I've been building this thing for years, and it just, you accumulate one piece of the costume at a time. and it's almost maddening because you're just like, man, I just want to get this thing together, but waiting list for everything. Y'all think lightsabers are bad?
Yeah.
Try waiting on Vader armor or cape sets or
Oh man. So I got a funny story just before everybody bails on us. I've been with the 501st 20 plus years. I started as Boba Fett, which hence the screen name, but and I did Stormtrooper, but I was taller than everybody, so I looked weird as a Stormtrooper. But I wanted to do Vader, and I was one of the same as the noobs that come on, and I jumped on the SLD forum, and even though I read everything about the rubies, I was like, yeah, but it comes in a box. I was like, it can't be that bad. So I ordered one, got it, opened it, didn't even finish putting it on. And I was like, hell no. And then that's when I went back and I spent a good 2 or 3 months reading on the SLD. I was a lurker, but I just read what everybody else had gone through and what all the process. So I prepped myself, and it took me 3 years to get my Vader. And in some cases it was because of the vendors I chose. So like I have the Darthstone helmet and armor, and for a period of time in particular, there was nothing better. And he was, as a prop maker, man, I don't know anybody who touches what he did. As a businessman, he had some difficulties, unfortunately, which seems to happen. But then same thing, like the Kev Vader, I knew I wanted the Kev Vader cape, but I think the wait list, when I wanted one, was like 3 years. So I got on that list and I waited. And it's because the people who make the stuff, they're just people and they have other jobs. And they make something, and when you have a prop guy who makes something really good and it gets out there, all of a sudden he was making 1 or 2 or 3, and then he gets 50 orders. And it's like, what do you think? It's magic? So I tried to explain that to people, but I knew I wanted to go after it the right way. And I also knew the time. And granted, this was, man, that was probably 9 or 10 years ago. I'm getting old, but it was a while back. It's still just like that, just because the stuff that's worth having, at least from my point of view, it's going to cost you a little more, but it's also going to take you longer because the people making it aren't churning it out just to throw it out. They're quality. They're putting a name behind it, and there are degrees. There are some vendors I know you can get stuff faster, and it's still approvable. It's what you want to do. Me, particularly because Vader was like my hero from the time I was a little kid, I wanted to do it right, and that's why when I opened that Rubies box, I look at it, I was like, that's not Darth Vader. I was like, that looks like his like little mousy cousin. It didn't look anything right, and that's why I went after it the way I did. But it is, yeah. I understand your plight because I lived it. It is a very long process to get Vader.
Well, I got stuff coming in, and I'm on waiting list for other stuff, and it'll eventually get built. I am building TK armor, but I'm worried like you. I'm 6'3".
Yeah, same here.
So I'm kind of like, yeah, I am going to be taller than all the other stormtroopers that I know of, but it is what it is. But the funny thing about SLD, really quick, and then I'll stop, is Darth Sloan or Alaska Vader. Do you know him?
Mm-hmm.
So he's the one that actually taught me how to build lightsabers. And he helped me convert my Kylo Ren lightsaber. So he was the one that got me started. And that was all on the SLD before I even knew about the custom saber shop and Corbant and, Plector Labs. I mean, he really helped me along. And then, things went all screwy from there.
Yeah, I think that must have been right after I left the SLD as a mod, because he when he first came in, I was mentoring him for a spell, and that's just how it works. You get that turnover. So there was a period of time where I designed the SLD site. I think I actually still use a lot of the original code that I put together for that forum. But they, you get really into it, particularly when you're building your costume. Once you've built your costume and you're out there trooping, you kind of you step back, and that's what happened to me. Is once I got my Vader perfect to where I wanted it, I stepped back. Then Kylo came, and then I went back in to build the Kylo. But by then, I was really just in there to build it. I wasn't doing all the moderating and stuff. But that couldn't have been too far.
Was Dawn Bright all involved when you were doing your Kylo?
So I saw her stuff so I got my helmet first. It took me a long time to get the soft parts. So she had done her original video of the movement when I was starting mine, and she was definitely helpful in showing the parts, because I am not at all skilled. Like, I can do stuff on a computer. I'm not skilled at sewing. I think if I tried, I'd sew my hand to my pants. So I had to find a trustworthy vendor to have my parts made, but I kept getting info from the forum and her videos and a few other sources to get it done right. And I finally got it to, a good point. But it's, yeah.
Yeah, I
But
needed
all that
Dawn
stuff-
because she was posting all the sewing templates and the material templates.
Yeah.
Because I sewed everything, Fernando. It was a lot of work. Hey, somebody
I
just asked, can they fit an LGT core into a Saber Forge Saber? I don't think so.
Oh, I am terrible. I don't know the companies, and I feel bad that I don't. But people ask me all the time about these companies. I'm like, I build mine. I don't know anybody.
Yeah, the Proffie cores that LGT and the POC Store and some of those other companies are building, they're really designed for their Sabers. They're not designed for, Saber Forge, Ultra Sabers, TCSS. The fact of the matter is, a lot of folks are buying these cheaper Sabers because they wanted Proffie, or they want a Proffie core and they figure they can put it in anything, and you can't. A lot of these custom Sabers that you want, you have to custom install them, and those Proffie cores and those generic cores are not designed to fit all hilts. Every hilt that I've installed takes a different chassis, I've never seen a single chassis that'll work in every Saber. Doesn't exist, because all these Saber companies that are building hilts all have different inside diameters, different internal lengths. They've got switches in different places. There is just no way that these Chinese companies can produce these Proffie cores and sell them as, hey, this will work in any Saber. That's not true. It'll work in any of their
saying that, it's false advertising. Yeah, that would be. That's the thing. I do see questions, and that's the one if I see a hilt I like, I'll order it, but I install myself, and I don't even know all the companies out there. I kind of frequent the same, I do the Saber Armory because Cal does great stuff. But I only buy empties and obviously Proffies from him. And I've got a couple of Corbanth hilts, and I picked up some stuff on Etsy, and I feel bad that I don't remember the name of the store. I'm terrible with that stuff, but I don't know there's all these companies that I know offer these cores or these pre-built ones. I'm just not familiar, and I don't really research them, so I'm not able to help with that kind of question. Ooh, that looks pretty.
So that is a custom Saber Shop hilt that they just came out with. It's called the F16, and it's got like a jet nozzle on the back of it, like an F16.
Almost looks like the Pod Racer engine.
Yep, it's pretty cool. I love it.
Cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I had to stop. I had to stop. If I bought every hilt that I thought was good looking, I'd be single and living on the street. So,
well, I'm gonna sell it.
I all respect to you for installing, man. I tried my hand at it. It's not my area of interest either. It's a lot of you put so much work in, and sending it out the door just felt like getting rid of a kid.
Well, but sometimes your kids come back to visit you, and it's like seeing an old friend.
It is. No, hey, more power to you. I don't think you being able to install for a lot of people helps a lot of people. So that's a great thing. It's
well, I appreciate all the work that you and Frederick and Brian and there's a lot of others that have done work on OS6, and it's pretty awesome. It's going to take us a year or more just to digest everything that's come out. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and there's still more. There's actually parts of OS6 that nobody realizes is there, I think. So I've got some surprises coming. I just need time.
It's going to be awesome.
Well, all right. I will let you go. Thank you so much, and we will catch you up soon. And thanks everybody for joining. If anybody has specific questions, the Crucible, anything OS6, anything library, anything editor, post in the Crucible, because that's the easiest way for Frederick to be able to answer, and he's the man who's going to answer most of the stuff. Or that's really, I've been on Facebook a little bit. I just don't have the time. So I know people are posting there and I'm missing stuff. The Crucible is really easier for me even to keep up with. But thanks everyone, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good night.